everyone, my name's Aisha and I'm here today to talk about a condition in pregnancy called ICP. That stands for intrahepatic cholestasis in pregnancy. And it's a condition that affects the liver, which therefore causes some itching in pregnancy. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, it's just itching, what's the big deal? But actually, when it comes to itching in pregnancy, it can be an underlying symptom of something a little bit more serious, such as ICP. So, it does require additional monitoring for mother and baby. And actually, women from the South Asian origin have higher risk of getting it. So I think it's every 1 in 70 to 1 in 80 pregnancies, women have ICP. So it's important that we raise this awareness in the South Asian community about what to do should it occur. So today we are joined by an expert in ICP. Her name is Jenny Chambers, and she is the CEO of ICP Support, which is a charity helping women with ICP. And also she works in research about ICP at Imperial College London. So she herself also had ICP when she was pregnant, which is what led her to start the charity. So thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us today. We'll get right into it. So ICP, intrahepatic cholestasis in pregnancy. Just tell us about it and how many pregnant women get it.
Okay, so ICP, and as you say, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
And some women may know it also as obstetric cholestasis, OC. But the correct scientific term is ICP, and it affects around 5,500 women in the UK every year. And when you break those numbers down, it's about 0.7% of the birth rate. But women whose family birth origins are India or Pakistan have almost double that rate as well.
Right. Okay, right. And is there a reason for that? Do we know if there's a reason for it?
Such a good question. And the professor that I work with, Professor Catherine Williamson, is actually doing a project on this to try and find out whether women, South Asian women, perhaps have a more of a genetic or have a different genetic change to the condition. So cholestasis, ICP, is caused by a combination of things. It's caused by a combination of genetics and hormones and the environment.
Fine. And in terms of the symptoms of the condition, so we know obviously itching. Is there anything else to look out for?
Yes, there is. We know that typically women's urine goes a bit darker. More recently, I'd say within the last 5 years, women have started telling us about a pain they get, which is just under their rib cage and radiates round to the back. And that's called right upper quadrant pain. And it's often associated with the liver. And we don't know. We just don't know why women get it. One theory is that your liver, which doesn't have any nerve endings, so technically you don't get pain from your liver, but it is surrounded by a very thin membrane called the capsule, and that does have nerve endings. And the theory is that maybe in ICP, where the liver gets a little bit inflamed, the liver is touching the nerve capsule. And maybe there's so many maybes about this condition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but lots of research going into it. So it's a darkening of urine,
right upper quadrant pain, and the final one that not everybody gets is what we call steatorrhea, which is just simply a posh term for pale or floaty stools.
Okay.
Now, fine. You don't, in pregnancy, you don't go around with your head down the loo most of the time. but it is a good idea just to check. And if they float, or if they go a paler colour, even a yellowy colour, sometimes women's stools go quite grey. That's a sign that your body's not absorbing the fat soluble vitamins that it needs. So you need to flag that up with your health professional, because that in turn might increase your risk of bleeding quite severely once you've had your baby.
Right. Okay, fine. So that's quite interesting. I mean, even in terms of the itch then, if someone's pregnant and they're getting how severe does it have to be, or does it even have to be severe? to be able to then kind of flag it up to your doctor or whoever?
Yeah, such a good question.
Yeah.
I think years ago, everybody fixated on this itch having to be really severe. And certainly in my pregnancy, it was just awful. It started on my hands and my feet and eventually went mostly all over my body, but particularly my legs as well. And it would keep me awake at night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it would start about 6 o'clock in the evening and it just wouldn't go. And then it would subside about 5 in the morning. I'd be up, I didn't sleep, I made my legs bleed.
Oh wow.
I just didn't know what to do with myself. But I'm an extreme version of itching. On the other end of the scale, you could have somebody who's barely itching at all, and she can still have the condition.
Right.
And the thing is that I think a lot of people think of the itch as flagging up severity of ICP. The risk to the baby comes from another substance that your liver makes and which you need to help digest your food. We all have them, called bile acids.
Okay.
And these bile acids, as I said, are made in the liver. They help us to digest our fat-soluble vitamins, so we absolutely have to have them in our body. And they've got a very efficient recycling system. They go through the gut and then they get recycled back up to the liver. It's incredible. In fact, only about 5% of the bile acids we make are excreted through feces and urine. But in ICP, what happens is the liver's not coping as well with keeping these these bile acid levels down to the level they should be. But they cross the placenta.
So that's where it could affect the baby.
Yes. Yeah, we know they cross the placenta because of the research that's been done, and in very high levels. And I really need to sort of emphasize that it is at high level, so over 100 micromole per litre is what we would say when you measure them in the lab. When they're over 100, that's when they can be a problem for your baby. And that's when doctors looking after women with ICP will need to decide when to induce. And the most recent research from Caroline Ovadia, who's based in the UK, is that this should happen when the bile acids are over 100 and around 35 weeks of pregnancy.
Right, okay, so it can lead to ICP, it can lead potentially, depending on your bile acid levels, it can lead to an early induction of baby, basically.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
If you want to avoid the risk of stillbirth, which is 3.44% once levels are over 100. So roughly speaking, because you can't have half a baby, roughly speaking, 96 babies out of every 100 whose mother has ICP, they're going to be fine.
Okay.
They're actually going to be fine if you do nothing.
Okay.
But 4 of those babies won't be. If you leave them and you don't induce early, they are the ones that we know will be stillborn. And so they're the babies that researchers and doctors are wanting to protect, because it means that 90% of women who have ICP will also have bile acids that never go above 100.
Yeah.
And their babies are fine. Those women can wait until 38, 39 weeks of pregnancy to have their induction, possibly 40 weeks.
So obviously we've talked a lot about with ICP how most women will be absolutely fine, but it does require a bit more monitoring with bile acids.
Yes.
And perhaps, in that 10% of women, they'll have to have an induction earlier. Is there any kind of treatment during pregnancy that women can get for ICP at all?
Well, back in 1992, I trialled a drug for the research team in Birmingham, where I had my last little itch, and it was called ursodeoxycholic acid, and it was introduced by my liver specialist and by my new obstetrician, and I had absolute faith in these 2 people to look after me for my last baby. They were just brilliant, and I was happy to give this drug a go, and we thought it was working really well. It didn't help my itch.
Okay.
But something called my liver function test, because when you're being diagnosed for ICP, they'll not only test your bile acids, but they'll test something called your liver function as well. And that gives you a reading of several enzymes. And it tells you how the liver is coping. It tells you whether the liver's become inflamed or not. Okay. And so we knew that my liver had become inflamed during pregnancy. And so when we took Urso, when I tried it for the team, my liver function improved. And we all got really, really excited. We just thought, oh, this is great. And it started to gain traction with other doctors. And then I met the person I now work with, Professor Catherine Williamson, and she was using it in practice. And we were seeing it in research, and it seemed to be doing okay. Women would start taking it, and they might see an improvement in their liver function or even bile acids. And then if those bile acids went back up, doctors just increased the dose a little bit. And that we thought seemed to help. Didn't help all women. Sometimes those bile acids kept rising, but we got the impression in the early days that it was working. As time went on and we saw more and more women, we started to wonder if it really was working for all women because of the bile acids. And then we had a big trial. In fact, we had two, but the major trial called Pitches, a few years ago, the researchers compared Urso versus a dummy drug, what's called a placebo. Yeah. So when women signed up to do that trial, they either got the drug or they got the dummy drug, and nobody knew what they had. It's called a double-blind random controlled trial. It's the gold standard of testing drugs. And women can find out about this trial again on our website. The most recent research this year, again, by Caroline Ovadia, she did another big analysis. And what she's been able to show is, okay, Urso isn't that great for itch, and Urso doesn't tend to bring bile acids down overall. But what it can do is reduce the known associated outcome of ICP, which is spontaneous preterm birth. So this is going into labor and having your baby spontaneously before 37 weeks of pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And if you're someone whose bile acids are over 40, it definitely helps to reduce that risk of spontaneous labor. So that's a benefit. Do we have any other medication? Not at the moment, but excitingly, there's a new trial that has come from the US, and its sites are recruiting in the UK. It's called Ohana, which means family. And it's another medication that is put basically, it means women are going to excrete the bile acids.
Right, okay, fine. So I think it's that thing that, if you've been diagnosed with ICP, obviously to go see a healthcare professional, they'll probably do some tests to make sure, these tests obviously to make sure on the liver, bile acids, things like that, to make sure everything's okay. And, also to bear that in mind in terms of birthing and birth plans. But also that there are some treatments available, but they're still undergoing a lot more research. So it's uncertain, but of course, just to speak to your doctor about that. Yes. So I think that's really quite important. Like you said, it's that option as well, knowing, okay, if I can't try this, I'll try that. Something like that. Yeah. But actually, going back onto the point of your experience now, so you obviously had ICP and you were talking about how severe it was. Can you talk us through your experience and kind of how it was like on a daily basis?
So I started itching, and I actually thought it might be something like prickly heat, because I noticed it when I was on holiday in France. And when I was a little girl, I used to get prickly heat. Flagged it up with the GP, and he just said, "Oh no, you're just a bit unfortunate. Women itch in pregnancy, nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah."
Oh.
So unfortunately, just before 37 weeks, I was 36 plus 5. I'd been into hospital the day before to be checked over. Everything was okay. I mentioned the itch. They reassured me it was normal. They did some blood tests, and I went into labor the next day. But very sadly, the baby had died.
Oh, God.
So I went to hospital, and we obviously had her, and she was classified as an unexplained stillbirth. In the next pregnancy, I had about the same gestation, about 28 weeks. I started itching. I thought, well, this is weird. This is weird. And it's not prickly heat.
Not right.
Definitely not prickly heat. Flagged it up with the GP. No, don't you remember? You just itch in pregnancy. Perfectly normal. Don't worry about it. Itch continued. And this was coming into sort of June time. And it was obviously hot. And you know what hospitals are like.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially hospital beds. They're the worst for getting hot. So this itch continued, and I told them about it, and they said, no, we'll do some tests, some blood tests, and we'll just check. But really, it's just normal. And they told me all the blood tests were normal, which is fine. And I stayed in for the rest of the pregnancy, monitored carefully, and I was induced at 38 weeks and had my eldest son, Alex, at 38 weeks, and all was well, which is brilliant. And we went home, and it was fantastic. And then a couple of years later, it wasn't we, it was me that nagged for another baby, honest. So decided to try again and have another baby, which is brilliant. Lo me, the itching came again. And it was a tiny bit earlier, about 26, 27 weeks. And I just thought, this is really weird. And by then, you know what it's like, because I had Alex, you meet lots more mums and you get talking. And I could not find anyone else who'd itch like me in pregnancy. I just couldn't find anyone.
Yeah, well, it's like what you were saying, that you were bleeding, you were itching, you were up all night. That's quite clear, Yeah,
and nobody was like me. And I thought, well, this is really, really odd. I kept saying to the doctors, this is really odd. This can't be right. Yeah, honestly, you're just really unlucky. You're like allergic to pregnancy almost.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then everything, the itching kept going on, and it was as bad. It was horrendous. And having to get up, you say about coping, having to get up in the morning and look after a toddler. So you've not slept. You've really, really not slept.
My gosh, no,
and you've scratched yourself raw, and you don't know what to do with yourself. And then you've got to get up and either go to work or look after a toddler at home. It was, and I just started to become a bit more depressed.
Yeah.
And I did, I kept saying at my appointments, could I have the baby at 38 weeks like I had Alex? And they were saying, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Your bloods are normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Honestly, you're just unlucky. You don't need any special treatment, which is something one of the midwives said to me. You're just normal like any other mum, Jen. So I thought, okay. And eventually they agreed that I could be induced because I wasn't sleeping at 39 weeks. And so mum came up to help look after Alex, who was about 3.5 at this stage, and went to the midwives, got checked, everything was fine. Yeah. Went into labour at around tea time, went into the hospital, and there was no heartbeat.
Oh my God.
And I just thought, this cannot be happening again. This really cannot be happening again. But I knew it was. And we had another little girl who we called Olivia. And then finally, a few weeks later, my notes were seen in the same hospital, but by a different consultant who diagnosed ICP. And she diagnosed ICP. They weren't doing bile acids in those days to diagnose the condition. They were only doing liver function tests. But we found out that I had liver function tests for all my pregnancies.
Yeah.
And they were all abnormal.
Right.
And I've been told they were normal.
Yeah, that's the thing. They were saying you're absolutely normal. You don't need any special treatment, is what they said to you.
Yeah. So she then had to break the news to me that my liver function tests weren't normal. They were abnormal, that they confirmed that I had this condition. And then she had to say, I always remember her saying it because she looked at me and said, I may as well give you all the bad news at once, because I can see from your notes you kept asking to be induced early. And she said, the only way we know how to treat this condition is to induce women by 37, 38 weeks. And we were so close to have gone. If I'd been with her in that, rather than the other consultant, she'd be here.
That's the thing, isn't it? And you knew that I need to be induced. You were the one telling them, please, just because I can't. I mean, it was from a sleep point of view, actually, wasn't it? How interesting, because you were saying I couldn't. I mean, even for that, you're going into labour, you need energy. I mean, it would make sense, that is such a shame.
And I just had a gut feeling something wasn't right. It wasn't adding up. But you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you have no information, you have no background, you have all the health professionals telling you this is normal and your bloods are normal, you're not going. Well, I didn't feel resilient enough to challenge them.
Having a second opinion, what is wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with saying, Can I have another consultant just look at my records or something?
Yeah.
But it's not being difficult, or anything like that. It's just to get the care that you want.
Yeah. And that gut feeling, I think that gut feeling that women get for all sorts of things in their pregnancy, I think they need to trust that gut feeling. They need to listen to their own voice. But it is hard to go against health professionals. And it was really, when I got that diagnosis and she became my new consultant and I had a liver specialist looking after me, and between them, they started to give me the confidence to do more about the condition. And I wanted to raise awareness. I wanted to let women know, because I knew that all women in the country, when I first started raising awareness, all women in the country were like me, unless they were under my consultant, and being told that itching in pregnant was normal. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to get the information to women, not to tell them what they must do, but to give them the information that would empower them if they wanted to go back and challenge and say, well, look, there's this weird condition and I think I might have it. And that's literally how we started in the early days. I just wanted to get the information out to women, get the message out to women, and try and support them to get the care they needed to keep their babies safe. And I genuinely thought I'd only need to do this for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is a condition that can cause stillbirth, so all doctors are going to take it seriously, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
No, they didn't. In the early days, I was told by some doctors that I was frightening women, that I was telling them things about a condition that didn't exist.
Oh, my God. This is the thing. This is precisely why we're doing this video, because we want to increase this awareness. And like you said, fine, it might be, from hearing your story, it's one of those things where you're a bit like taken aback from it. But actually, it's important to know that, because otherwise people are just going to carry on in their pattern. Oh, I'm itching, it's fine, nothing to worry about. But actually, that's the whole point. The whole point of a GP, the whole point of healthcare professionals, is to flag up things that seem not right.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important, because, you can't, it's okay, it's just a bit of an itch. Just get it checked, for your peace of mind, if you need it to be peace of mind, at least.
Yeah.
Especially when you're pregnant, it's that thing, and I'm taken aback by your story. I really am. I mean, you've been through so much. And the fact that you started off this charity as a result of that, and you're helping other women, that is amazing. It really is, Jenny, honestly. And giving that support. And so tell us about ICP support then. I know obviously you started it. So we'll get your details, we'll get your website, and we'll put it on here. Tell us about the support you provide then.
Well, we support women through a variety of platforms. We've got emails, an email address women can write into. We've got a support line that's run on a voluntary basis, and we'd like it to be much more active than it is. And we're hoping to try and get some money to pursue that. But by far and large, our biggest support is provided through Facebook groups. And we have a main Facebook group for women who are pregnant with the condition, and it's private. So this means that their posts aren't seen by family members or friends who aren't members of the group.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very, very private. Women can post. And we have other women who've had the condition answering the questions. They have really in-depth knowledge about ICP. I also get on and I answer the questions as well. And again, it's very much about sharing the factual information about the condition. So things like you mustn't fast for your bile acid test, you must eat before your bile acid test. And just because you have one normal bile acid result, if you continue to itch, you must continue to be tested. So it's things like that. But it's more about supporting them to get the care they need, and also empathizing about that itch, telling them about the meds they can have. And we've got, golly, I'm just thinking now, quite a few thousand women who have joined the group, but obviously we want to reach more. We know we're not reaching all women. And I'm particularly conscious that we're not meeting, I don't think we're getting many South Asian women either finding us or joining us. And I'm not sure why that is. And we're very aware that this community, they have a greater chance of getting ICP. So we want to make sure that they get all the information that they need to make sure their babies stay safe. So we're aware as a charity, we're doing quite a bit, but there's so much more we want to do as well.
It sounds amazing. Honestly, it sounds like there's proper support there. Like you said, even the empathy or the sympathy of just knowing, not being told, if that line will always stick in my head now, that you don't need special treatment. That will always remain in my head, because that would really upset me. And it's the thing of, actually we need help, but it's who to go to. So I think it's great that there is someone that people can go to. So ICP support is brilliant. We'll definitely put the details on there for anyone out there. Coming to an end now, thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing your story with us as well, actually, because I imagine that's quite difficult for you to share. But also just all the other work that you're doing. So we hope that everyone that's watching out there, that get yourself checked over if you're feeling any concern about anything. Don't try and downplay it in your head. Other people might, even family members might just tell you, it's just a bit of an itch, and I used to have a bit of an itch. Go get checked. Right.
Because I think the thing to remember is, to put it in perspective, about 23% of women do itch in pregnancy. So that's quite a high percentage, but only a tiny number are going to be ICP. But you don't know until you do the blood test to check. And I think the thing I'm most proud of about our charity is we are research based. I'm so privileged and lucky to be working in research, as well as doing the charity. I work in research. I'm so lucky. I'm not a doctor or a midwife. I'm not a scientist. I've just been very privileged to be able to meet the right people and work with them, and they've trained me, and now I look after the trials for cholestasis studies. So I've got that background to me, and we also have a genetics expert in the group and the charity as well running it. So we're not, we're research based. Everything, all the information we give comes from a background of research and science.
That's brilliant. That is literally what's needed, isn't it? And I think getting yourself that help, you can contact ICP support. If you need any help at all, go to your GP, other healthcare professionals as well. But there are people that you can turn to, and there are options, and that's the main thing to get out there. Definitely. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and thanks very much for being here.
I'm sat here thinking I'm still not sure we've covered everything, but I think we've covered a fair bit. You know how you think, did I miss this? Did I miss that? But it's all on the website anyway.
We'll get that website on there. Thank you so much for listening.